bids are in, the gavel's dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. Yes, that's right. This is WineBid's podcast dedicated to all things wine value, wine retail, wine auctions. And this is our recap episode. With me, as always, is Paul Walker, our wine auction expert and wine expert. I am, of course, Jeff McGurn on WineBid's marketing team. This is our, as I said, this is our recap episode. So we're going to jump right into recapping what went on this week. You know, top bid getters. At the top, we had 06 Duval Loire Brut Grand Cru Prestige Blanc de Blanc. This one, we had three of them. 9 bids, took it from 65 to 71. A lot of action on this champagne.
Yeah, I think we skipped over it too. I don't think we mentioned it last week. I'm used to like seeing things we mention be listed in the, in the top 5 or top 10, and there will be shortly. But this wine, well-respected producer, I think maybe more popular in Europe than the US. That's just something I heard about Duval Loire, but I think it's also more expensive there. But anyway, it did get a lot of activity, and there you go. Ganavat, the next one down, no surprise there. Every time anything's going to auction, they get bid way up. So where that started at 60 and went to 160.
I'm fairly certain we talked about the Ganavat. In fact,
I know we mentioned it last week.
There's some more in auction this week, and it already has bids on it. Like what? 5 minutes.
Every time it goes up, it's like, and there's so many different, designations and labels, and the Anne Jean-Francois, it's essentially a different, it's not a different domain, but it's a different labeling as some of the, earlier wines that were just listed in our Jean-Francois. So, it's all very collectible.
The other one that I thought was really interesting, 2019 Domaine Bernard Bonnier.
Yes.
The Merceau. This one, 8 bids.
Serious.
390 to 650. We had 3 of them.
Serious stuff. Yeah, there were. And what's also interesting is that one of these wines did not sell. Now, granted, it wasn't a Premier Cru, and so the Geneviève is probably more sought after. Well, it's definitely more sought after than just the appellation Merceau. However, I think currently there's still a bottle left of the 18 Merceau old vines in the auction. So the 19, Merceau de Geneviève, that I did not expect to see that. It must just be impossible to find, because that's a lot. That's quite an increase. And I think the other Bernard Bonham wines, I don't believe they performed as well in last week's auction.
Just to give you an idea, the last time we saw this at auction prior to yesterday was May of 2022, where they sold at $391.
Interesting.
We're not talking about we haven't seen this in 10 years. We saw this less than a year ago, and it's already doubled in value, making me want to jump on that bandwagon before it doubles in value again, right? So by next March, it should... Of course, I'm joking. Let's talk about one that we've joked about not even joked about, we've just talked about this a few times, but the 19 Chateau Clemens Asphodele.
Oh, right. The dry wine.
The dry wine, which
100% Semillon.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. 6 bids. We had 2 of them. They started at 30. They ended up hammering at $37 a piece. I thought that was really cool to see some action on that.
I think it's also just pretty rare, right? You can reliably find a bottle of Clément in the auction, sweet wine, almost any time. But for the Asphodel, for the 100% Semillon, I wonder what production level is. I was kind of curious to go to see if, they have stats on it, or maybe the importer's got stats on production of that, but it's got to be pretty limited.
I would think the vast majority of their juice goes toward the Sauterne.
Yeah.
And you probably know this better than I do, but I know some regions are required by law to hold back a certain amount of juice just to make sure that they're not just to maintain certain levels of quality.
Right.
But I have no idea if that's anywhere near the case.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be curious. I'm sure there's probably stats or something that you could look up from either from the winery itself or the broker or the importer or something.
Literally, as we're talking, I'm looking through saying how many bottles?
Sure. I wanted to mention too, along the same lines of Bernard Bonham, There were some Nicolas Four wines in last.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
just about to mention those. The Louis Saint George.
Yeah, and those are again quite rare, very hip, and priced to match. I do think maybe they started a little low, but
Well, this
who
is
knows? Because there was 17. The prices were actually all over the place. Because I think the 17 Les Herbus was at $295, and I don't know if it sold or not. So probably did. But anyway,
the 19. This is the first time we've ever seen the 19 at auction.
I don't think if we ever seen Nicolas Four wines in the auction for that matter.
That I don't know.
I don't think so. Anyway, there was quite a bit.
We had a 85 Faveli Chambois Moussini with 6 bids, started 85, hammered at 185. I thought that was super interesting. Or what? Sorry, started 85, hammered 125.
125. Yeah, that's still impressive. That's a lot of action. I mean, kind of legendary red Burgundy vintage. It's one of those kind of things that would be very, very difficult to replace, because you might be able to stumble upon Grand Crus, from 85 here and there, just because it's a heralded vintage. And, there's probably some pretty rare examples that aren't getting drunk. But I would have imagined that most of the Village Chambois Musigny was drunk a long time ago, or, over the last 40 years, whatever it is. But that's pretty cool. That's kind of a neat thing to see. And I don't think 125 is a crazy price to pay, for something of that vintage, from a serious producer.
O2 Mayakama.
Yeah, right. That's like in line with my comments. Actually, I didn't think it was too bad for $63 a piece, or 63 and 64. Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. That, you consider what people are paying for the Cabernet. It's like the Chardonnay lasts forever too. It's super age worthy, super, super interesting wine. But yeah, that's cool.
I didn't think it was crazy, but what I will say is, just looking at the history, it was like the last time we sold one of these bottles was in November of 2022. It hammered, we sold 2 of them for $45 a piece. But then before that, it was like we last saw them in 2011, where they were selling at $25 a piece. So
and all the way back to 06, they were selling for 20. So
yeah, they
were even selling at low as $15 in 06. So go figure.
God, can you imagine going out and getting Mayakama shards for like $15 these days? How nice would that?
I mean, it's a question of style, though. I mean, I don't think this is going to just have mass appeal, frankly. I don't think that I think people who are buying this, I don't know, but it's not like something from the Sonoma Coast or Santa Cruz Mountains or something. It's definitely its own style. So I would chalk it up to collectability and sort of the Mayakamas, following that it's got it these days. But hey, I don't know. It might be amazing right now.
We had some 2019 Schrader Double Diamond Oakville Cabernet Sauvignon, 375 milliliters, start at 70 and hammer at 120 for a 375. Wow.
Well, weird too, right? Because this is as we mentioned this wine 1,000 times, the number one spectator wine.
Yes.
And for some reason, to me, that doesn't really make sense, because in the old days, or at least in the past, it seemed like when these things went out the first time, after the magazine releases the news, it's like they go bonkers and then they settle down, right? This is totally the opposite of what you would expect, because they were like $68, $70 a piece, back in late 2022. Then they kind of dipped down to 60, 61. And then suddenly they're at 80. And then suddenly 120. And it's like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, okay. And
they were in auction last month for $70. They hammered at $70 last month.
Well, but even as recently as this last auction, we had 750s that were hammering for 145.
Yeah, so good.
And then you're paying 120 for a 375.
Yeah, that's the mystery of the auction.
I mean, look, I don't know what to do with that.
Well, I did. One of my predictions came correct. Right next to that, the 2020 Yves Colomb Von Romanée, Village Von Romanée 2020, which is the first time that's ever been up for auction. I said, yeah, it's probably going to go over 100, and sure enough. 105, I think.
Yeah, 105. Well, yeah, something right around there. I think one might have gone for like 110 and then two went
The
for
other two
105.
for 105.
And then we had some action on some Montepulciano di Abruzzo, some 2017.
Yeah, Tiberia. I'd never heard of that before.
But 6 bids took it from 25 to 33 on 3 of those bottles. So somebody's super into that. We had the 99 Vincent Giardin Pommard Les Rougens.
Les Rougens.
That's what I said. And 6 bids took it from 65 to.
Can't help myself. Yeah, that's storied vintage. That's probably the earliest I would drink a Pommard, frankly. Those things are so gnarly. They last so long. And 99 was just phenomenal red vintage. So, and exceedingly, or becoming more and more rare, I should say. It's not exceedingly rare at this point, but becoming more and more rare and not too expensive. No. I mean, it's a big Negociant brand without trying to, not trying to sully it or anything, but there's some great wines from Vincent Jardin. But yeah, that's still not too bad. $80, not bad.
Did you notice the 1970 Margaux that went from started at 300 and hammered it?
Yeah, somebody wanted that thing.
Somebody wanted.
That's not, I mean, if you look at the history of that wine, it's kind of similar, right? It's hammered for $300, I think, relatively recently. Yeah, $300 back in January. Excuse me, in January, a couple bottles.
I mean, it's been 300 for like ever.
Go back to 21. Yeah, you're right. 300 back in 21, 320 back in 2020. Yeah. And then it's under 300 and whatever, kind of slowly goes back from there. But
maybe it just took 53 years to really hit its stride.
It just had to wait until this year. And then now it's really taken off.
Year 52, it's still really tight and closed up, and then year 53, all of a sudden, it's a triple 100-pointer.
Year.
Yeah, this is where it's really going crazy.
This is the year.
There was look, what we can maybe mention 1 or 2 other things, and let's go over like the big hitters. But there's a couple of other small things. Anything else you wanted to mention before we go over the big hitters?
No, actually, nothing too. We mentioned there were some pretty obscure, pretty rare Burgundies and Loire wines and things. I think some of the stuff we did talk about did sell, but interesting to see kind of price variation and, what did go, what didn't go. Those Aurélien Lurquin wines, looks like, I believe those did sell. That one Chardonnay, which I believe was a still wine. I was kind of confused as I was reviewing these things last week, but no, excuse me, I made a mistake again. It's labeled a Chardonnay, but it's a sparkling wine, and that got bid up. But I don't know.
You can actually make Chardonnay, sparkling wine out of Chardonnay. Oh.
Yeah, I just figured that out.
Possible. It's been done.
I just figured that out. No, I just did want to mention, because we talked about the Bernard Bonin and Nicolas Faure, and then Aurélien Lurquin. I think the Chardonnay was the one wine that got bid up more than I think anything else. No, looks like maybe prior to Le Vin Meunier also. So anyway, it's just fun to see those things because they just never come around that much. And so it's always fun to see multiple bids on rare things, and obviously not too surprising, but there you go.
Let's talk some of the big lots. Taking the cake this week, and I think I know what I'm getting for my birthday. 08, Emmanuel Rouget.
Oh, boy.
Creux, Parentois.
Well, since you don't know how to pronounce it, I'm not going to give it to you.
I'll learn. That's why. Well, here was the great thing is it would be amazing if you bought me 1 bottle of that. But ladies and gentlemen, Paul bought me a 3-bottle lot
six
of Mags.
6 of them. I bought you two 3-packs.
3-bottle lot, 2 3-packs of Mags for me for the paltry sum of $29,640 or $15,000 or $14,820.
Yeah, that's a rare item. Rare to see this wine. First of all, in large format, also in original box. So that was exciting. That was definitely exciting.
So rare. This is the only time we've seen a 3-bottle lot of mags of these. I mean, it's rare to see a mag, right? It's even rare to see 6 of them at the same time.
Right. Two, 3-packs. Exactly.
92 Domaine Romani Conti. This one sold for $8,575, which, I guess possibly you got that for me for my birthday.
Well, it's interesting when we saw what it was I think the 11 was just in a couple of weeks ago, and the 15 was in, and they're just, there's so much more. And 92, that was a tricky vintage. So I'm wondering how this one is drinking now. I'm sure it's probably also okay, but
also consider we saw this exact same bottle in February of this year, and it sold for $9,500.
Interesting. Okay.
And this one, to me at least, looks to be in better condition, because the one we sold for $9,500 had just a little bit of ullage. This one has no, doesn't look to have as much ullage, and yet we're looking at almost $1,000.
Yeah. No, that's significant.
That's a pretty big swing. The other big one is a 2020 Screaming Eagle Cabernet Sauvignon. I'm guessing these Screaming Eagles just came out. Tricky, a little bit of I would say this was a hot vintage in Napa, but maybe not in the way people traditionally think of hot vintages in Napa. This one's a 3-bottle lot OWC. Started at $59.85. 4 bids took it to $7,985. Woo, is that a swing? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good one to talk about. Yeah, because you're right. It was just released, a controversial vintage. There's not a lot of red wines made in 2020 in Napa and Sonoma and elsewhere in the whole West Coast for that matter. So, it's actually my idea on this is that it could be considerably valuable down the road, just because it's from such a sort of a challenging, it was such a difficult, terrible year for so many people, and obviously so many reasons. But still, I think it'll be interesting to see sort of how it progresses over time. I don't know if it's going to ever go, bonkers like some of the stellar vintages around it, like 19 or, whatever, 16 or 13, but it probably will be sort of more collectible just because of the controversy over the vintage itself. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I think it was a little low to start. And there's another one in the current week that's, I think, at $69.85 that's got a bid. So, there's probably going to be more. I'm sure we'll see more in the coming weeks. But yeah, it's always interesting to see these marquee labels when they hit the auction for the first time. So it was exciting.
99 DRC Latache sold for 65. 09 Bizot Echezeaux. We sold 2 of those for $45.50 a piece.
Yeah.
So just a lot of big bergs going this last week. Like we moved a lot, and then 2 more 298 Lataches, DRC Lataches for $4,000 a piece. A 16 Petrus. We actually sold 116 Petrus for $32.50. I think we still have maybe one more in auction. 18 Harlan 3-bottle lot OWC for $3,030, and Screaming Eagle Cab 2013 for $3,000. So
right.
It's kind of interesting. You see like 2013 Screaming Eagle Cab for $3,000 versus a 2020 3-bottle lot for just about $8,000. So, you're seeing a little bit of price variation there, but 2013, I know you're not a big fan of 2013 vintage in Napa, but I've had some phenomenal 2013 Napa.
No, I think it's an awesome vintage. I just think that there's some serious tannin there, and the wine's going to need some time. The experience I've had is they're not ready to drink at all. I'd prefer, 14s and 17s, but yeah, down the road, they'll probably come into their own, I'm sure. But yeah, you're right. 13 Screaming Eagle for $3,000. That's serious. I think there's a 19 3-pack up right now at $10,000 that actually I think sold in January. I was looking at some of these. That's why I can remember this, but that's not too surprising. Not too surprising.
04 DRC Saint Vivant. Romani Saint Vivant, $29.50. 2 bottles of Loire. One was competitive. The Domaine Loire Von Romani.
Beaumonts, yeah.
Yeah, well, the Beaumonts and was it Genevieve? That one went
Genevieve, yeah.
Genevieve. That one went for $28.50, and then the Beaumonts went for $27.60.
Yeah, it's interesting that Beaumont actually, because I think that lot was rolling for a while. And in fact, it definitely was. So always funny to see that happen when
and then it gets action.
Like,
right?
No, wait, I wanted that.
and then like, but not just one person, like multiple people are like, wait, we wanted that. Armand Rousseau Chambertin, 2011 for 22.35. We had two of those, one went. Yeah, and you talked about the 29 Scarecrow. Just a lot of like Grand Cru, really high-end Burgundy that seemed to go out at auction this week. Anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap things up?
No, I think that was about it. There was a couple other bottles of Bizo that were in that sold last week. 16 Macedo Magnum sold for $14.70, which actually didn't seem terribly high to me. So I'm thinking, and also 07 Reyes, $13.75. I think that maybe buyers are like, no, wait, this is the time to buy. There's been lots of market concern, bank things happening that are frightening out there. So it may be spurring some kind of a sort of buying situation, because some of these really have kind of corrected a little bit, I think. And so that's what's going on. And then you'll see other examples where, there's things getting multiple bids, and maybe they're recent releases or relatively rare, like the 70 Margaux, right? Like, how could that double in value in a month? That doesn't really make any sense.
Or the DRC that went down $1,000,
right?
In value in a few months. Like,
there's some weird outlier activity going on, but I would imagine there's this correction, could be taking place, and so maybe things are sort of coming around and turning around in that regard, but hard to say. We'll have to keep watching.
I'll tell you, to me, it seems like we've got a market that maybe is in a little bit of flux in a lot of different directions. And people are trying to figure out, the market's trying to figure out where exactly prices should lie on some of the stuff. And I think it's across the board. I think it's for stuff at all ends of the spectrum. And it's not just things going up in value. I think, to your point, we see things coming down. We see some things retreating in value a little bit, and in some cases, quite a bit as well. Anyway, and with that concludes our wine auction recap here at WineBid. As always, with you is Paul Walker, and I am Jeff McGurn. This has been Finally Hammered. A happy bidding, and cheers.
Cheers.